Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. I'll start off with the peace greeting in this one, but this one is probably going to be a bit hostile. Some people that are pro-black, and I don't blame people for being pro-black, but you have to be pro-black and not be pro-whack. You gotta not be a No-Tep, because those are not the same thing. But some people claiming to be pro-black are faking the funk. And frankly, it's hard. Actually, that's probably the default position right now, because those who get up on YouTube and loudly proclaim it usually are going to have some dumb ideas. I mean, it's funny because you got Io Kimathi talking about when the mulattoes come, it's war. Excuse me, sir? You may have that too. I mean, I don't know about people of a white parent usually trying to sabotage the progress of black folks. Not in America, sir. Don't know about that, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying this as a mulatto, I'm MGM. But, there's this idea amongst some of them nowadays, especially amongst the men. Some of you men are fighting about you're fighting not even the battles of women, you are fighting the battles of little girls. Little girls' battles are not even to be fought by grown women, let alone grown men. What do I mean by that? What I want for the men and women like those of the golden sphere and those actually even outside of it is justice and safety. What I want for our unmixed relatives is justice and safety. These are the things that I'm looking for, and I've stated this before. In the end, these are the important things to want anyway. Everything else could be debated, but for the most part, justice and safety, no, you can't debate those. Now, safety is pretty easy to understand. Well, what constitutes justice and what constitutes injustice? Let me give you an idea. Gentlemen, some of you need to fuck the shuck up with this idea and this concern that MLS women, or any sort of black admixed women, are out here trying to replace black unmixed women. Because one, when you say replace, you are not talking about the overall job market. You damn sure ain't talking about the dangerous work that usually men do and not even women in the first place. Even if these jobs pay well, that's not what you're talking about. You are largely talking, gentlemen, about modeling careers and acting careers and acting roles. That's mostly what you're talking about. You're largely talking about media pedestalization of women. A position in which she is not only pedestalized, but paid and pedestalized so that she can sit up and say, well, I'm paid to be the woman that most men want, but none will ever have. Why the hell would we be fighting for something like that? I mean, women can do that if they want, it's up to them, but why would we fight for anybody to be in a position in which most would want her, but nobody ever gets to actually be with her? I really don't like to use the term have, because I don't see them as possessions until they start acting like they're just possessions to be bought and sold. Those are the ones I find to be nasty and funky. To be honest with you, when they start acting like this, I imagine a bad smell coming from them, including their breath. But what I'm saying is, why would we be fighting for anyone, any lady in the world to be pedestalized to where she can sit up and just revel in the ultimate ego trip? All the men want me and none of them can be with me. None of them gets to be my husband or even boyfriend. None of them are ever going to be validated by me, but they all want me. This is the ultimate ego trip that many Western women desire. Now, some of them would say, well, every woman in the world wants that. If that's the case, that just makes every woman in the world man's enemy. No, every woman in the world does not necessarily want that. Many do, even outside of the West, yes. But all, no. No, that's not the case. I live in a society in which there are women who would like that kind of attention, but most of them would rather live anonymously because they don't want to have to pay that kind of security. Now, see, some of the Western sisters that hear me saying this are saying, well, I mean, I just find a man that can protect me. I'm sorry, but when you live like that, look, you take someone like Halle Berry. She's going to need bodyguards when she goes out in the public. Not one man can be her bodyguard team and security. That's not possible for any one individual, man or woman. It would take Superman to do that. And if a man can be Superman, he's going to have some other stuff to do. End of story. So that's the gist of it. So with that being said, gentlemen, you're coming with this narrative that is largely, one, it's women's debate and argument. It does not help MLS men, black admixed men. It doesn't help black unmixed men. It doesn't even help the black women, be they admixed or unmixed, or the ones you don't even count as black in the long run anyway. It doesn't help them. Most of the women that wind up caught up in this are not going to be actors or models. Very small percentages of the population of either gender in any society are going to be models and actresses. Everybody wants to be, but very few will actually be such. You are arguing over something that is not only very rare, but you're arguing over a premise that is not true. Frankly, I'm getting sick and tired of hearing this because while I myself do think that most ladies in the world need to have, well, I should say most Western ladies in the world need to have some sort of humble pie because human beings need that. In general, men are already forced to eat humble pie. So that's taken care of. But even though I would sit up and say, man, F these acting careers and these modeling jobs, most of you ladies ain't never gonna have them and you couldn't. The fact still remains that you are also doing these ladies an injustice when you sit up and say, well, the black admixed woman is trying to replace the black unmixed woman. Father Mucker, if you think that the one-drop rule needs to be done away with, and most black folks believe in the one-drop rule, how do women who believe in the one-drop rule, making them equally black, try to replace each other? It doesn't work like that. Let's say the argument had been about us men in the regular job market. Well, you black admixed men are trying to replace us black unmixed men in the job market. Okay, if y'all really believed that, but you also believed you have to tell us that we are not black because we've adopted the one-drop rule you want to throw out, then foul the huck. Can we believe that we are you and then try to replace you if we are you? You can't have it both ways. And I'm sick of the illogic of people that even probably mean to be pro-black, but they're just that furthermucking stupid. Sick of this mess, man. As an educator, you can't blame me for being sick and tired and just out of patience with stupidity in adults. I don't have patience with that kind of stupidity in a child. Why should I hear this stuff and keep my mouth shut around you and about what you're doing and what you're saying? If you know that most of us have taken on the one-drop rule and it is just recently being contested in the United States, you know that. And in some other parts of the Americas, actually in Latin America now, it's being taken on while the U.S. is beginning to shuck it and throw that off and push that off our shoulders. Actually, the black admixed population in Latin America, to a certain extent, is beginning to take it on. In Brazil, they are now taking these semi-Negro categories that they used to have in order to not be called black, and they're putting them under a black umbrella. And because they're becoming proud of their African origin, I put the fist up to them. And I'm with them in that regard. It's their choice. They get to choose. In America, y'all get to choose. In the UK, y'all get to choose. But what I'm glad about is that they are throwing off the inferiority complex associated with black blood. They should not have ever had it in the first fathermucking place to begin with. I'm glad they're throwing it off. In Costa Rica, my cousin, who looks like you might say Northern Sudanese, or what you think a Northern Sudanese would look like. My cousin went to Costa Rica, and when he was in a bar, a sister walked in, saw him, and asked him in Spanish if he was from out of town, and he said, I'm actually from outside of the country. I just landed here today to visit. And she said, oh, okay. Well, let me show you where we hang out. And then he said, well, thank you. Who was we? And she looked and said, Africans. Who else? That's a Costa Rican lady telling my American cousin, who looks like a Sudanese, he looks like a black admixture, that they are Africans, and she'll show him where they hang out. I don't get that over here in the Middle East when I see the black Middle Eastern citizens. I'm more likely to get it if I'm with my wife. That's what winds up happening. Remember coming across, we went shopping, and there's a black citizen. There's the manager at that store. And you can, I mean, if you hear him talking, he's speaking in Arabic. His voice is similar to mine. He's skinny, but his voice is similar to mine. He sounds like he's 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. He sounds like Michael Clark Duncan, but he don't speak a sentence. He can't speak a sentence of English. When I saw him, I gave my brother's head nod once, and he nodded back, being nice, but I don't think he knew why. But then he saw me with my wife, and I saw him the second time. He gave me the full-fledged dap. But I got to be out with her. Here's my cousin sitting in Costa Rica, and someone comes up and identifies both of them as not just negro or prieto, but africano. So they're taking on this one-drop rule in defiance of white supremacy. And you sit here looking at a nationality that is doing what you say and slowly putting it off to the side, but hasn't gotten to a critical mass level of this yet. So this means that the majority of us are still under the one-drop rule. And you want to tell people who are following the one-drop rule, stop trying to replace us. What kind of stupidity is that? Now, to the Muslim brother across the pond, which to me now was across a continent and the Mediterranean, but from across the pond from where I grew up, we've discussed it, and I have said, well, wait a minute, if we're all if we're identifying ourselves as black under the one-drop rule, how are we trying to replace other black people if we see ourselves as black? You actually said that's a valid point. So if the last time that you tried to assert the point that we're trying to replace y'all was before we had that conversation, then no need to stand corrected. You've already accepted the validity of my point. If you have restated or reiterated that assertion since we've had the conversation, stand corrected at this point. I don't know if you've said anything like that after we've had that conversation. So I'm not going to assume you did or not. You would have to tell me which one. Now, to another one that is in the States that I know about. And I want to give a shout out to a particular brother from the North for making me aware of that. But to the other asserter of this point from in the United States, bruh, stop with the stupidity, man. I will sit up here and tell ladies of any stripe, and especially in the West, you need to eat some humble pie. You need to eat some humble pie. You need to have some sort of humility, not so much for my benefit, I'm gone, but for your own long-term benefit and for the benefit of whichever men wind up marrying you, if you can get them to do this anymore, since that's unpopular in the West now for good legal reasons. I will still turn around and tell you, do not accuse these women of something they did not do. Don't do it. That is not okay. Especially when you're only talking about modeling jobs and acting career, not even acting careers, but just movie roles. Most of us are never going to make any money from someone's modeling job or acting movie roles. We're going to be the ones paying to see the models or paying to see the movies and putting the money in their pockets. So, why the hell would you sit up here and fuss at the actor or actress or model when instead you could simply say, look, we're not going to see movies in which this type of representation is not carried out. Because I'm not going front. In the photographs I saw of Betty Shabazz, She didn't have the same melanin count as Angela Bassett. It wasn't too far apart either, but she didn't have quite that count. And that's okay. We didn't trip about that. Nobody tripped when Denzel Washington played Malcolm X. Now, I have seen live and color footage of Malcolm X, and they are very different in their shades, according to some people. To others, they're kind of different, but in any case, hands down, Mr. Washington has a higher melanin count than El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz Malcolm X had. We did not trip about that. Nobody said a further-mucking word about that. I never heard anyone say anything about that until some people started saying, hold up, we want more movie roles. What do you mean? You want more movie roles? There actually was an actress who was offered a role in Black Panther, and she turned it down because she said, I don't represent Africans. Excuse me, ma'am, that's not completely true. But then again, you know, some of y'all that are in this super No-Tep pro-whack nationalism would say she does not represent at all. And that's not the case. You want to talk about how admixed the Fulani are? Fine, I don't care. Turns out that in actuality, a lot of the population, especially along the coast and in capital cities of Western Africa, has some admixture. That turns out to be the case. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Start doing DNA swabs, everybody gets surprised. Because even in I'm not even going to say sub-Saharan, but even in non-Saharan tropical Africa, and in South Africa, which is not tropical, there is something that happens. When people do DNA swabs, oh, they get surprised too. Look, there's a man at my job. He was one of my colleagues. He left and went back to the States. This man was from Somalia. I think he was from the South, if I'm not mistaken. He turned out to be 32% Bantu. You cannot tell by looking at this man. He turned out to be 32% Bantu. He does not speak a single Bantu language, and that is a very large language family, by the way. He turned out to be 32%. That's a distinct bloodline within the black race. But some of y'all would say it's not within the black race because the Somalis aren't black. And you know what? Based on the way that some of y'all in the UK treated them when y'all were kids, I understand why some of them would say that. They don't mean that they're not a part of the black race. They mean that they're not a part of the non-Somali black culture because they were not welcomed in the UK when they got there. And I'm not going to sit up here and tell them, you know what? You should try to reconcile. No, shuck that fit. All I say is, well, just be honest about your DNA. Your DNA is black, but it's a distinct lineage within the black race. And you know what? If you're talking about a cultural defection, I can't blame you. If you were mistreated, I cannot blame anybody for culturally defecting from whomever mistreated them. Absolutely. If you were saying there is a line, we are not allies, your fight is not our fight, even if it's based on childhood treatment, so furthermucking what? We should have raised our kids to be nicer to each other. And when I say we, I'm talking about everybody under the one-drop rule, under the black umbrella from half a generation ago. This is something we should have been doing and we didn't. And I don't feel a guck with arguments some adults want to make now about how, oh, that's just something from childhood. No, shuck that fit. We did not collectively raise our kids to be nicer to each other. We actually told nice kids, well, you're just going to have to prepare yourself for being bullied. Well, that's fine to get them prepared, but we rarely sat up and told, you know, the little mean demon-ass kid, you're a subhuman rat bastard the way you treat other kids for no reason. Why should we not talk to bad kids like that? We sit up and let them tear down the self-esteem of other children, and we didn't tear down their self-esteem like we should have. No, you're a piece of shit because I saw you push that kid on the playground and he didn't do anything to you. When you learn to behave yourself, you won't be a piece of shit anymore. Why don't we say this to some of these kids, the ones that really are bad? Because when they turn around and actually make enemies for us, Amira may be right about that. Now, I know what the reason is. I'm talking about the exiled lioness. She may have actually been right about how she was treated after 9/11. I know what that's about. I know that probably came about because of black folks discovering a few years before that how bad Arabs used to talk about us. And that is true. That on one hand, a lot of them would sympathize with us. On the other hand, they would still call us Abid. And it was black Muslims that opened our eyes to this. So a lot of black non-Muslims said, F y'all too. That was why Ayo Kimathi came out later and called them sandcrackers. Did I agree with that? No. But you know what? I could not, even Ayo Kimathi, he was way out there. Even I could not blame him for that anger. Even I could not. Because I knew he didn't make it up. He got exaggerated information, but I knew he didn't just pull it out of nothing. And getting back to us, to be honest, we're going to sit up and say, well, the white kids aren't raising their kids any better. I know they're not. That would have meant that we could have easily raised ours to be better than theirs, but instead we took on their worldview. Well, kids will be kids. No, that's a part of it. That's the beginning of it, but that's not the end of it. And to be honest with you, yes, because of this lackadaisical attitude we have about that, we have our kids making our future enemies now. And it's not just in elementary school on the playground. This is happening in the high school hallways too. Making enemies from within, because a lot of these debates, even within the black community, started in high school hallways, and from without. And let's just call it what it is. Dads on duty, I'm glad that it was nice of them to do what they did. They were also dads, by the way. These were not community eunuchs. But they had to be there because in the end, without them there, what were the boys doing to each other? They were sizing each other up physically and saying, I can kick your behind, therefore I don't even need to respect you. I'll fight you for any reason. I'll fight you because I skipped class, got caught, got in trouble for it, got punished, and I don't like the way you looked when you walked by when they gave me the ruling for it, or the sentence, or the detention. That's what they were doing. I'm not afraid of you, so I want to fight you. That's what they were doing. That's coward, punk, bully, bullshit. And I'm glad them dads were there. If that put a stop to it, excellent, that's good. But I'm going to tell y'all too, a lot of that has to do with ideas that we let these kids have collectively, aggregately, and then these arguments spill over into adulthood. And now we got grown ass men sitting up here, so-called fighting for women's rights to be paid buckets of money for vanity that most of the women are never going to collect. Most people in the world would never collect because they would never get these jobs. That's not what this is about. This is about, like I said, justice and safety. If we're going to have a split within the black population, or what was formerly considered black, and a recategorization, it needs to be based on justice and safety. If we can't properly represent you in politics, okay, you know what? You don't believe we can. We got two political categories now. Even under the census, okay, that's a different story. But I'm not about to sit up here and get into this arguing over women's rights to be vain. Women can be loved and appreciated even when they are not beautiful. They can be loved and appreciated, or they can be respected and appreciated. Let's put it like that. And loved and appreciated. They can be loved and appreciated by their relatives if they're not going to find a husband because of their looks. They can be respected and appreciated regardless of their looks, because these two things, the respect and appreciation and even love, are going to come out of behavior. And when they don't misbehave, no real man in his right mind is walking around pointing fingers at innocent women just for the fun of it. So we could sit up and talk about what is just and what is safe for these ladies, and for the men they want to marry, and for the children they will conceive and raise up later on. And this is a perfectly fine discussion to have all across the spectrum. But on one hand, I mean, this is childish. They're trying to replace the black woman. Now, if they consider themselves black and they really believe it, how the hell are they trying to replace them? Where you get that from? You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of some of these dumb niggas in high school I remember. Most of them not raised by their dads at all, saying dumb stuff like, yeah, black man, we finna march for riding the king. You need to be there too. Great, just gonna be after school. No, man, we're skipping class for that. Okay, and who's taking us and where are we going? Oh, see, why you worried about that? If you're down for the cause, you just go ahead and throw your whole academic pursuits away. You know, when it's time for something like that. And then when it's time to celebrate and enjoy being black, no, bruh, you ain't one us. Okay, you know what? That's what it sounds like. I'm not the only one to go through that. I only heard that actually about maybe 2 times in my whole childhood. But we all know someone that was like that. And I'm talking the same people. We all know someone, same person that was like that. Whether it was based on your shade or whether it was based on you being smart. Nigga, you can't hang with me. You ain't going to this party with me. Not with them big old bulletproof glasses you got on, and then on test day, hey man, let me sit by you during the test. What the hell for? Oh man, you ain't gonna help your boy? Oh, now we boys. So whatever it was, we all know someone like that. And that's what you guys are starting to sound like. And behind some concerns that don't have nothing to do with any man or what benefits that man, and ain't got nothing to do with what's gonna benefit most normal women in this world. Dumb ninjas, you got caught up in an emotional argument because you love her. And I don't blame you for loving her as long as she loves you back. But if she was willing to sit up there and watch you get into these arguments over something so stupid, trifling, petty, childish, and vain, and she didn't say, hold up, man, there are things in life more important than this, I can tell you she does not love you. You love her and she does not love you. And I know because I've been that dude that loved them and they did not love me. Wanted me to remain loyal, wanted me to remain against interracial marriage and all this other stuff. You know, they wanted that, but they didn't love me. And they didn't have to love me. It was their right not to, as long as they were honest about it. I'm telling you, gentlemen, you got duped. You got duped by women that are insecure. You're sitting up there telling them all the reasons they don't need to be insecure. The funny thing is, I know women that these ladies you love are trashing. Women like, let's take for instance, Mrs. Golden. I can't say the name as she has it on YouTube because I'm not allowed to call a person by a deity's name, but Mrs. Golden, multiracial movement. Even some ladies in their chats with whom I don't agree, they have said these ladies don't even have, they're talking about the ladies for whom you were championing. The ladies whom you say they want to replace intentionally, yeah, they're sitting up and saying these ladies don't even have to feel so insecure about anything. They are beautiful. They're as naturally beautiful as anyone else until they ruin their natural looks or their natural attitudes. These women that y'all think are so stuck up are actually saying things that are not stuck up. They don't compliment men that much. They don't compliment their own men that much. And they're sitting up and saying, matter of fact, even some of the ones that are vain aren't, they're sitting up and saying about the women who you say they're trying to replace. No, they're gorgeous, they're beautiful. There's no reason they can't be good actresses and models, as if that's the only way that a woman can be worth something or even be beautiful. But they're sitting up and stressing this. And these are some of the same women that are saying that their men, their natural counterpart, MLS men, are dusty and wimpish and feminine. And some of the same ones saying this are sitting up and saying that the women you think they're trying to replace. So what I'm saying is, even when some of these women that would be enemies to me, you're blaming them for something they didn't do. Don't worry, I got stuff on them already. Stuff they've actually done or said for which I can blame them. You don't need to come in and add something they didn't do, didn't say, and weren't trying to do and blame them for that. Because you blame people for stuff they didn't do, you're going to undermine your own honesty, your own credibility. Just like if somebody comes and blames you for something you didn't do and didn't say. Hell, if I sat up here and talked about something you never did, never said, nobody in your camp ever said, and I blamed y'all for it, guess what? I would undermine my credibility, right? Well, that sword cuts both ways. Now, one of you, there's one I know, he's a plain idiot. I don't blame him for his loyalty and his self-love, but he's a plain idiot. The other one just has a problem in that he listens to him too fucking much. And I'm gonna say this too. I don't already going in on some men who have called our unmixed male relatives names like Crispies and Crunchies and all this other stuff. I don't already going in on them, and I'll do it again. If I hear them say this stuff again, I'd go in on them again. The thing is, I actually don't remember their names, the ones I went in on for doing this. I can't remember what their names are. I could probably see their names in the chat and I would have no clue. But I remember they did it. I already went in on them about this because right is right and wrong is wrong and fair is fair. We are capable of handling our disagreements or even political defections from each other fairly, justly, and maturely. If there's going to be a split, and I'm not saying there has to be one, it's up to you all, but if there's going to be a split, we can do this peacefully. And if there's not going to be one, which is equally fine with me, we can still handle some of these old debates peacefully. Because in all honesty, in the United States, there's never been this mass betrayal by, and I'm talking in the US. You want to talk about some other place, fine. But in the United States, there has never been this mass betrayal by the men or the women who had some non-black parents against those who had no non-African ancestry. That has not happened in the States that I could find. And I've had to teach history, believe me. I would have been told about something like that if there was a historical pattern time after time after time where all the betrayals could, or most even, if most of the betrayals could have been traced back to those of recent white ancestry, they would have already been brought up. As a matter of fact, it would have been put into the history books. It wouldn't have to be one of these historical lessons that somebody has to get on YouTube and teach because nobody would teach this in the school system. No, that wouldn't have been the case because understand, they would have no reason to hide this. Even during segregation, when the one-drop rule was legally enforced in the southeastern states, and we all had to go to the same schools and take the same history classes with the same outdated textbooks. Even in those situations, they never had an interest in hiding something like that. If that were the truth, they would have gone ahead and put that in the textbooks. The ones that they wanted, especially for us, they would have put that in. We would have believed it, and we would have been even more fractured than what we were, more divided back then than what we were before the end of Jim Crow segregation. If that had been the case, then Rosa Parks would have been contested right off the bat. She would have been distrusted right off the bat. Malcolm X would have been distrusted right off the bat. Muhammad Ali would have been distrusted right off of the bat. If there was really a historical pattern in the United States of people that look like them and look like me betraying the rest of our ancestry. There's no way you would have been able to convince the educational boards and their historians, meaning masses historians, to hide something like this from the textbooks. Because even if we were cast out and cast aside by Jim Crow segregation, they still did not want our unity. This would have been a very easy and convenient way for them, and a truthful way if this had actually happened, for them to foster more disunity than what they already had been able to do. If this were true, the divisions based on shade from which we have historically suffered would have only been deeper, a lot deeper, and a lot earlier. Let's stop with the lies. You want to tell me about what happened in Haiti that was different? Fine. But even what I found out was that the Vincent O.J. Rebellion preceded the Haitian Rebellion, and I'm looking for any evidence that Vincent O.J. Was against his own, was against the rest of his, meaning against his African ancestry and against his African relatives. I'm looking for evidence of that. I didn't find it yet. Maybe it's there, but I never found it on the sources that were written in English. And he was killed brutally for his rebellion. Yeah. So, you know what? I've been going on for 34 minutes. I didn't mean to, but I have. Thanks for listening. Tell the truth and quit with these lies. Fair is fair and right is right and wrong is wrong. If you really have a grudge, be honest about what the grudge is. If there's going to be a split, be honest about why you're calling for it. If there's not going to be one, be honest about why there's going to be a debate internally, whatever the case is, but be honest about it. I'm going to tell you the same thing I done told sisters, women of any percentage of black blood in the West, same thing I done told them I'm going to say to you. Don't make up stuff. Tell the truth. And if you don't know, it's okay. Say, I don't know about that. Because when you just don't know something, people aren't going to blame you in their right minds. If you really want to feel superior, as I've said before, you're going to have to actually act and be, you're going to have to behave and be superior, behaviorally and morally. Thank you all for listening. Black heart, black mind, blackout. Assalamu alaikum. Until next time.